Episode 73, Breaking Break Comps with BreakComp of BreakCompCards. Okay, welcome to what I think is going to be episode 73. Our special guest today is the owner of BreakComp, Nick. And Nick, just so you know, before I allow you to introduce yourself, I think the episode of this, I think the title of this episode is going to be Breaking Break Comps with BreakComp of BreakCompCards. I think it's kind of like that. How much wood can a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Well done.
Nick,
like
thank
it.
you. Yes, awesome. Nick, thank you so much for being on the pod and also what you're doing for the hobby, which we're going to be talking about. I think that the hobby really is gains such a great benefit from what you're doing. So welcome to the pod. And do you want to kind of do a little brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, Denny, thanks for having me on your pod to begin with. Looking forward to talking cards and about BreakComp. A little bit about myself and kind of my collecting origin story. I started around 1987 with the 87 tops, wood grain borders, trying to pull the Bo Jackson at the beginning, and then obviously looking back. Seeing what the year McGuire had that year with the 49 home runs and finding him in the set. So that was a lot of fun to go back through all the cards I bought from that year and pick those out. Then moving into the 90s, really became huge into collecting basketball cards along with football and baseball as well, but really loved the Shaq years and the new rookie class coming in each year. Prior to Shaq, Larry Johnson, really enjoyed that year. And yeah, I guess collected up until approximately 95. So missed out on some good years there. Started back up collecting around 2000, 2001, and have been collecting ever since. Past few years, I've collected a lot of cards. Prior to that, say 2010 to the 2020, I was really enjoying actual game used memorabilia, trying to collect that, especially home run game used baseballs.
Thank you for that intro. When I think about what you just said, there's so many things that I want to kind of go down the rabbit hole with you with, but Larry Johnson, grandmama, I gotta say, people talk about this whole like, oh, fanatics, marketing, gimmicks, and whatever. Like there are some people who like it, some people who don't. Marketing is what moves the needle, and especially with the zeitgeist, right? Like the cultural relevancy. So, I remember as a kid, just the Larry Johnson, grandmama, little Penny with Penny
Oh
Hardaway.
yeah.
I mean, Shaq, he's in Blue Chips. I mean, there's some bombs like Kazam and all that stuff, but like, I mean, they were like culturally relevant. I mean, there was that thing, right? I mean, the only person more famous in the world other than Michael Jordan was like Mickey Mouse or whatever, right? So just kind of like this whole general concept of players or athletes just transcending the sports realm into the pop culture so that our parents know about them, right? Like
That's
right
right.
now, I don't think, I mean, you ask my mom. I mean, of course she knew who like the big players were because I was talking about them all the time, right? Posters of them. And, she'd be like, who's on that poster? And, like she would know the Jordans, but she would be like, who is this, Kevin Garnett or, Gary Payton. But I think it's so important to, again, I don't think it's our job to grow the hobby. I think there are things that we do that naturally can result in that. But like, I mean, just you saying Larry Johnson just made me think about just, man, he was, that was a fun time, right?
It was a wonderful time to grow up, kind of being a kid, teenager. And then when in addition to the cards, you throw in, especially the basketball players, the shoes, the sneakers they were wearing, trying to go to, Foot Locker or the mall to get those shoes pre-internet days. The Shaq shoes, the Reebok pumps, incredible time.
Oh my gosh,
It's a
those
very
Reebok
nostalgic
pumps.
time for
How
me.
much did I beg my mom for that? Mall
Yeah.
culture, man. I mean, I watching Stranger Things, the I think it was at the second season, but when they're in the mall and they're just doing the whole mall rats thing, just so
Uh-huh.
much fun.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up in the US? Like, are you mostly from one place or did you move around?
Yeah, I live today where I grew up, lived in Pittsburgh for a year while my wife now was in college. But I'm in roughly Lancaster, Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half from Philly, 45 minutes, hour away from Harrisburg.
Lancaster. Is that near Kenneth Square?
I think it's Kennett. Is it Kennett Square?
Kennett, right. No H. I'm
I
sorry.
think that's on the way to Philly.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
the reason I ask is I
I
have a
don't know,
friend.
maybe an hour away from here.
Gotcha. The reason I
I'm in
ask is
Amish country here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Amish country.
Yeah.
Okay. No, the reason I ask is I have a friend whose family's from Kennett. I thought it was maybe near Lancaster, maybe it's not. I don't know
Yeah.
Pennsylvania too well, although I probably should. But a little trivia or factoid for those
Yeah.
listening, and of course, thank you for listening. You could be listening to any podcast in the world, but you're here with me and Nick. Is that Kennett Square is the world's top producer of mushrooms.
Hmm.
Did you know that?
I did know that. Yes. Yeah.
Wild. What is
Yeah.
up with the
Yeah.
water or the topography of Kennett Square? No H.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. I don't know.
So you're in Amish country. So did you grow up with a lot of local card shops in your area?
Yeah. Yeah. So much fun visiting card shops, especially back in the day. Um, yeah, a lot of maybe three or four card shops, and then we had an every Thursday evening card show
Hmm,
here. Occasionally a Saturday card show. So yeah, it was fun.
nice. So you grew up, are they still around, by the way, or are they kind of closed?
No, I don't. None of them are around anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
No, all new
So
local card shops opened up.
I know a recent podcast episode from Cage Lawyer was like, your LCS is going to be closed soon, and I was like, oh no,
Mhm.
not my LCS, but I mean it could be true. But speaking of Cage, I did get to first learn about you through his
Yeah.
podcast, The Hobby with Cage. Shout out to Cage, man. I would love to have him on this podcast one day. But I heard you on his podcast, and I've heard you on other podcasts since then, and I want to do my best not to duplicate questions, but
Mhm.
this could also be the first time a listener hears from you. So,
That's right. That's right.
apologies in advance. But I want to dive deep with, what you're doing because I think it's just so interesting. So I know in your bio, you say you're kind of like the Kayak of pricing breaks. So can you, I think a lot of, it's almost like saying the Netflix of something, the Kayak of
Yeah.
something. But
Yeah.
for those who are maybe not as familiar, do
Sure.
you kind of want to talk a little bit about that kind of like elevator pitch or the quickie?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of got the idea for the site from kind of the vacation travel model of price comparison. In addition to the market movers, the card ladders that already existed with tracking prices and data in the hobby. But as far as kayak and Priceline type models, yeah, you can go to breakcomp.com. You can enter in different search criteria, and it'll bring up all the different breakers that are breaking that particular product. And you can there are links to click to go to the websites or the social selling sites of where the particular breaker is breaking the product, and you can just compare prices of the different breakers.
Awesome. So I have seen the website. I played around with it.
Mhm.
I first met you through Instagram, and we DM'd a little bit. And again,
Yep.
I've heard you on other podcasts. So I know I like the website. It is user friendly, and there is a place to create an account. So again, the website is breakcomp.com, right?
Correct, and it is free
And
to use.
yeah, it's free to
Yep.
use. So
Mhm.
my question to you, and maybe
Mhm.
other listeners, if they check out the website, they'll see that you don't need to create an account to utilize the powers of the website. So what advantage is there to creating an account?
Sure. Well, we actually require after you do 2 to 3 search. I think it's 3 searches. We do require you to curate a free account, No credit card or obviously anything like that is necessary.
Uh-huh.
It's simple, quick, and then you're free to do as many searches as you wish on the site.
So why is that? Like, why? Like, I mean, it could be any number, right? 2 to 3,
Yeah,
3 to 4, but like, what is the underlying rationale for kind of like asking people to sign up? Is it kind of like bots and being worried about people like abusing the site, or what's the reason?
sure. Primarily we want a customer base and get the email addresses of the individuals using the site,
Hmm.
and then eventually we're going to offer do email marketing and to those individuals um, for content that they choose and want.
Awesome. So it is free,
Yeah.
but yeah, it seems like you definitely want to, like any business in the hobby. I mean, there has to be some sort of like monetization end goal, and I'm not here to like try to get your magic formula or secret sauce, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. Like, here's a free service. After 2 to 3 times, it's almost like I don't know if it's a right way to put it, like a free paywall, right? I mean, there's some places where you can read 1 or 2 articles for
Mm-hmm.
free, and then you
Right.
gotta sign up for something. Like, I think maybe the New York Times, that they ask you like it's free, but you gotta sign up. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
just
that's
to be clear, we're not selling their data or anything like that, or doing anything with their data. It's just something we require after three attempts, so
Nick.
we
You're
can stay in contact.
so you're telling me no one's gonna call me about my car's extended warranty after I sign up with you?
I don't think you need to worry about that, Denny.
Okay, good. Thank you. So you say, when I was DMing back and forth with you about coming on, which again, thank you for doing so.
Sure.
It
Thank
seemed,
you.
you knew the premise of me having you and other people recently on, which is kind of like this whole journalism or watchdogging, which again, it's
Mhm.
kind of hard to get a watchdog because I think they kind of want to maintain, like I kind of like get to know the personality of someone, or they have to open up and be vulnerable. And I think maybe some folks, that their brand is not to do that. So I totally get it. I respect that.
Mhm.
But you also, when I said, hey, I think that you're kind of like a reporter because you're
Mhm.
reporting on BreakComp um, uh, comparison points, or like
Right.
just kind of like price data. um, you said you're not a reporter to me, which I respect, but
Sure.
it's maybe just like a little bit of my own opinion of, I think you might be selling yourself a little short because
Sure.
you know I think, and you can disagree and we can talk about this, but I feel like reporters, what they do is they take information, like preferably facts over opinions, but they take information, facts, they do the 5 Ws, who, what, where, when, why,
Mhm.
and then they package it into a digestible format. For TV, it's like a news story, or for a newspaper, it's like an article. Your medium is neither print or visual. I mean, it is visual, but it's Instagram posts. At least that's
Mhm.
how I know you from, right? And then you have the
Sure.
website.
Sure. Yep.
So I like, what do you think about that? Now that I've explained it in that way, would you still say you're not a reporter of data, of break prices?
Sure. I did pause a little bit and think about that when I got that question or the statement when you sent it, just to think about it. And I thought about it, and no, I don't really consider myself a reporter at all, or it's not the objective of what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm more trying to take data, aggregate it, put it into a simple to see or use um, place for everybody to access and see the best pricing or the comparisons that they want to see. While doing that, yeah, I can see how you could say I'm reporting it.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. I'm not here to. I just wanted to kind of get
Yeah,
your
yeah,
feeling of that.
sure.
So before we dive into kind of like that analogy of the kayak, I want to say I did
Yeah.
play around with the website. This is a very rough estimate, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. But I,
Mhm.
I looked at the number of breakers that you have on like your drop down list. Once you
Yeah.
kind of click the arrow and you see like sorting or filtering by breaker,
Mhm.
it seems like on its face, like when you see your drop down list to scroll on, there's about 16 to 20 breaker names. And then once you press kind of like the down, your mouse to go down a whole section, it looks like I press it about 16 times. So my rough estimate, based on just that very rudimentary way, and I did have to ask Alexa because I'm not doing math by hand, and I
Right.
didn't have my so 16 times 18 is roughly 288. So I think, if the math is right, I mean, Alexa's right, I could have been wrong with the scrolling. You have about 288 breakers at one point or another you've reported on their I'm sorry, not reported, but like you've aggregated their pricing. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, and I would say that's about right. Yeah, and it's
Yes.
obviously it's fine to use the word reported.
Yeah.
I don't care what term you use.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. Yeah, like you said, you can see a list of all the breakers on the site through the drop down box if you choose to search specifically by or for a specific breaker. If you wanted to go that route, there's many different routes that you can go to conduct the search. Set, year, product, many different opportunities. Check it. Go to the site and check it out for yourself.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome, man. So that's a lot. I mean, it
It
makes me
is a
wonder
lot.
how.
Yes.
I mean, do you think that what percentage of the break? I mean, it's so impossible, right? Because it's like the Wild West, and there are small
Mhm.
breakers who you never heard of. Of course, there are the big ones, but do you have a general idea of what percentage of all breakers that 288 encompasses?
I would say there's a lot not included that break on. I don't have the actual number, but
Yeah.
there's a lot that breaks on TikTok that aren't included in
Mm,
there. And I would say a lot, I wouldn't say a lot, a few whatnot breakers that don't really post their pricing or do auction style breaks that aren't on there.
right.
Um, Other than that, I would say there's a high percentage of breakers on the site that we've reported on previously.
Man, I had some follow-up questions, but once you mentioned the auction style breaks, because you can't
Yeah.
report on that, right? Because you
Right.
started at a
Well.
dollar, and it's like, can I just say, we talk about shill bidding on eBay auctions a
Mhm.
lot because those are the comps and people manipulate. My understanding, again, whether you're a big or small breaker, is you have your friends or these alt accounts, and you just kind of drive up the price. I mean, it's shill. I mean, my definition of shill, and I've talked about this before with like the whole mega bid or whatever bid situation, is if you do not have the intent to buy at the bid that you put in,
Mhm.
that's the shill bid. Other people say it's other definitions. To me, it's the intent. And I could be totally, I mean, it's my opinion, so it's not wrong, but it's just kind of like that's my working definition, is honing in on that word intent. And back when I was doing more breaks, and I am trying to get a little bit more into them now, just for entertainment value and just seeing, because it is a non de minimis, aspect of the hobby.
Mhm.
But I just feel like, you know, that this whole we're starting it at a dollar, and then you have like these prices just jump immediately. It's like you start at a dollar, but then you have some person in the chat immediately putting in 20, 30, 40, $50, even more than that, but like they'll just
Yeah.
immediately put that in there. So it's almost like it's false. Again, could it be a genuine buyer customer who just wants to say enough of the lowballing and slowing down, let's move it quicker? Sure. But
Yeah.
there are some breakers, unfortunately, and I'm not going to get into the rumors of who and what and all that, but like
Mhm.
my understanding is people just kind of they have people who are it's like the game is rigged. It's like if auctions are entertainment and it's like it's supposed to be fun, it's like trying to shoot a basketball into one of those carnival hoops where
Yeah.
the
That's right.
hoop is bent and the
Mhm.
ball is super large, and you can't you got to be even like Steph Curry's not going to hit that that shot. So I mean, what do you think about auction style breaks?
Yeah, I mean, auctions are fun. I don't participate in breaks anymore to avoid a
Ah,
conflict of interest. But yeah, auctions are fun. From a graded card, raw card standpoint, I enjoy participating in those style breaks. Um, and yeah, there is a lot of shilling going on from there. I don't really follow or don't have the numbers to really comment specifically on auction style breaks because I don't
yeah,
follow them heavily.
yeah,
But yes, I have heard rumors as well, obviously, that are
right.
out there. As far as the numbers jumping, I yeah, it does look out at times, but I can say I've done that when I was trying to win bids as well to try to get others not interested in trying to take the bid up where they're
Discourage.
not
Yep.
as engaged
Hmm.
in kind of the gamification of an auction.
Yeah.
um but yes, it does look odd to comment on that point of what you're saying.
I don't play fantasy football anymore. I mean, or any
Mhm.
fantasy sports, but I remember doing the auction style drafting of fantasy football players, and I
Yeah.
remember some of my friends, their strategy was instead of incrementally going up $1 or a few dollars, is just put in their max bid and just
Mhm.
kind of almost like shock the draft room and be like, oh man, he's gonna pay $2 over the average price for Adrian Peterson, and then people are like kind of scared off, like they're almost like, man, I don't think I can get him. So there is definitely, I love the psychology of auctions. Like I'm doing these like
Yeah.
dollar eBay auctions, and for me, I know that you can extract more value and it may take longer, but just buy it nows and best offers, or go to shows and haggle the price. But there is something very kind of alluring, exciting about auctions. So, but I know you don't do
Absolutely.
auctions. I just wanted to say that out loud because I think
Yeah.
it's really like it's quite a riveting thing to me.
Yeah, I love auctions, both from a selling standpoint and a buying standpoint. Um, and speaking of auctions, go to send your cards to PC Sports Cards. They are a sponsor of ours.
Yes.
Yeah, consigned with PC Sports Cards. Big fan of them.
Okay, so one, I think I just
Mhm.
learned you don't get into breaks anymore. That's like
Correct.
I was gonna actually ask that, so I'm glad you kind of preempted it. Two, kind of like the partnership or the sponsorship that you have. It was a question that I had down here. I'm gonna like look for it and bring it up in my notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, let's talk about that before we get into the kayak aspect, because I want
Sure. Go
I
for it.
want to kind of use that analogy a little bit more and play around with it. But so it seems like based also again, not just the kayak is in your Instagram bio. In your Instagram bio, you say, or it looks as if you do have a partnership or a collaboration with PC Sports Cards. Maybe I'll have them on the podcast down the road with maybe talking about
Mhm.
consigners and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I'm gonna ask the question after a little bit of intro, which I wrote down here for myself, which is like,
Mhm.
have you seen this? Have you seen season 5 of The Wire? Like, are you a Wire fan? Do you know that show?
I'm not a Wire fan, or
Okay.
I haven't watched The Wire. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
Sopranos fan.
You're a what fan? Sopranos.
Sopranos.
Oh
Yeah.
man, well, welcome to the a new podcast about the Sopranos. Yeah, I love HBO, shows and all that. So
Mhm.
even if you didn't watch The Wire,
Yeah.
there was this one season that talked about kind of like the newsroom and kind of like what go the ins and outs of a newspaper, just based on, it wasn't about a newspaper company, but like it had elements about that. So anyway, my understanding of a newsroom is when you have like the editorial side, the reporting, and then you have like the marketing side, which has to do with like receiving the advertisements. Like I understand you're not a reporter per se, you're not a newspaper, you're not a journalist, but in general, the editorial board is completely separate from the marketing arm. At least, they have been, and I think in the modern newspaper world, it's blurring the lines because newspapers are, well, let's be real, they're dying and they're barely able to keep afloat.
Mhm. Yeah.
But my question to you kind of is like, you know, I don't know if it's gonna be a softball or a hard one, but kind of like, how are you able to kind of separate this one part of like, I, aggregate the data and I send it out, but then I also have a sponsor, like, you tell me how it's working with a PC sports cards, but you have someone who maybe, I guess, there is no conflict of interest. I think that's what I'm trying to get at here, but they're not doing breaks and like they're doing consignment. So maybe it's not
Right.
that hard. So maybe it is a softball, but care to kind of speak to that in general?
Yeah, yeah, it kind of is a softball in a way because it is in a conflict of interest. Not that I'm opposed to advertising for breakers at all, because what the data says is what the data says.
Mhm.
They are the breakers are the individuals out there displaying pricing to the public of what they want. So I I'm not changing numbers or showing favoritism towards any type of breaker. There's really no reason that I would, because why would people use BreakComp then if I did that?
Yeah.
If the numbers weren't accurate, it wouldn't make sense.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I answered your
No,
question.
no, yeah, I think you did. Yeah, again, there's no
Uh,
favoritism.
yeah, but
It's the
all
numbers are the numbers, right?
right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like for PC sports cards, all we're doing is um, social media advertisements for them for their posts.
Social media. Okay.
Yeah, to give them new consigners.
So I've seen, I don't know if you would call it like an evolution of your content, but I really
Mhm.
like how recently, and this is how we started talking a little bit more on DMs, I think, other
Mhm.
than just like the comment section. It has to do kind of in a way with like you're analyzing the data in different ways. Like, recently you had a percentage up and down, which someone had a question about that I want to get to later. But like you provide data on specific teams, specific when it's like a pick your, I don't know what to call it, wrestler, driver,
Yeah,
UFC
Mhm.
fighter, golfer, I don't know, right?
Yeah,
But like
right.
not team sports.
Yeah,
Alphabet. Oh my gosh, breakers are now just breaking Wemby down into colors and inserts, right? Because they're like, we need to make this
yes,
cheap
yes,
enough
yeah.
but like it's such a home run hit that you need to fractionalize Wemby. I think it's just wild.
Expensive.
Um,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I can't believe how crazy he's keeping afloat. I mean, can't even get his autographs. Same thing with like the
Right.
major
Right.
quarterbacks in the NFL. Can't get their autographs, and yet these boxes are going for same, if not more, because of how hot they are in the market. I think it's just wild because it does not cost Tops and Panini or Fanatic. Like, it doesn't cost. There's so much that goes into the cost of like card manufacturing, but like autographs, licenses, those are super important. And I can see
Yeah.
why if you get someone's autograph, you got to pay them per signature, and it costs more to do that. But it doesn't cost that much more to make like a shiny card versus a different type of shiny card.
Right. Yeah. You're exactly right. But those partnerships with the leagues or the players associations, I would imagine, are quite expensive. So they need to try to recoup money wherever they can.
Yeah,
But yeah, it is quite expensive without autographs.
yeah, well, it's
At least
absolutely
there's
wild.
different colors in Prism, especially at some nice multiple to the value of the base if you hit one of those. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's really gambling.
Do people really think it costs more to make a super fractor versus a true blue and a true gold and a true red? Like, it's all the same. So,
Yeah,
it's interesting you said earlier about how you really sought after the game used, because I imagine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but like I imagine you did that because you wanted to feel closer to the players, right? Or the athletes. Like, oh, this was worn by that player in a game, and maybe there's sweat on it or something, or it just felt more like of a connection to the player, right?
yeah. What really got me into the game used was actually during my wedding reception, I was bidding on an eBay item and actually won a Joe DiMaggio game used home run baseball from the World Series. So after winning that, that really got me into the game used home run ball collecting. So that's an interesting item and story behind the way I got that. And
All
yes, my
right.
wife does know and everything like
I
that.
thank you. You're like such a clairvoyant. You know exactly. I feel like you're reading my computer screen or my thoughts because I didn't have that down here on my computer screen because it was a follow up to what you just said. But the natural question was going to be, does your wife know? And she does. And wow, that's amazing.
I don't know if she knew
Congratulations.
at the time that I was, or I don't think she knew at the time I was
She didn't know at the
doing
time.
that. But yes,
Yeah, you tell her much later down the road. Oh my goodness, you're like, why are you checking your phone so much? It's like,
I don't know.
oh, that
I probably did tell her after I won it because I was so excited that I did win that particular item. So I'm sure she did know that night, but not
you're
pre
like,
buying during the buying or bidding
oh
activity.
my goodness. You're like, honey, this is the happiest day of my life. And here are the two reasons why.
Yep.
That is the best. I can't think of a better eBay story, like an auction. Like, there's so many of us, I've made jokes about it in my content about how people are, they're on the John, or they're, they're like doing errands, or they're, supposed to be like watching their kid, and the kid's like falling over or whatever.
That's right.
There's so many things people do and they're so distracted. And of course, it's not just eBay, right? It's just anything with our phones. So like, you got people on their phones all the time doing all sorts of things when they should be present in the real world. So it's not like it's eBay's fault. It's just another thing that our phones are distracting us from.
That's right.
um but wow, eBay, you didn't want to use any like Gixin or eBay sniping tool. You were like, I need to focus on this.
Yeah, I guess they were. I guess I don't think I was using one back then.
Mm. How long ago was this?
This was back in 2007.
Okay. Oh,
I'm
or
sure
okay.
they existed, but I don't think I was really using them at the
No,
time. I
that's a
wanted to,
while.
yeah, I wanted to make sure I got it.
So definitely smartphone era. Definitely not like, I mean, I can't even imagine if it was like you at like a with a landline, or you remember like the AOL sound,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
you're like at a computer, like the business, the hotels, like, I don't know, like business room, and like trying to like bid on eBay like that, like on a computer
yeah.
with like a CRT monitor and like a mouse that's like connected to the huge motherboard. But no, so you were bidding on it, man, 2007. That is amazing. And you still have that ball, of course, right?
I do. Yes, yes,
Man, that's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you win for best eBay story of it. Like, that has to be. There's no one beating that. I'm gonna have to clip it. I'm gonna make that into content. So, you love singles, you love memorabilia, you used to do breaks, you don't do them anymore.
I wasn't heavy
Clearly,
into breaks, but I did a few, yeah, here and there. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I imagine you're a Yankees fan or just a DiMaggio fan, but you PC DiMaggio and old vintage Yankees.
Yeah, I like vintage. Yeah, I do like DiMaggio a lot too. I'm a Phillies fan, but I
Phillies,
love
okay.
the history of the Yankees, and I actually even have a portrait of, like, a life size portrait of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig painted on the wall in my basement.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I'm just into history of baseball
Yeah, you can't
specifically.
talk about the history of baseball without talking about the Yankees. So
That's right.
I don't think it's too much of a stretch. You're like vintage Yankees, but also modern or ultra modern Phillies. Like, you root for the Philly. You want the Phillies of 2024 like to do well.
Yeah,
You want them
yeah,
to go to the World Series like a lot of the Philly fans do. Okay. All right.
yeah,
So that makes
yeah. I'm
sense.
a big fan of Philly teams in general. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So I love that we teased that out. Got a really good story out of that. So I do want
good.
to transition into talking about the kayak model,
Sure.
or the analogy of kayak, because I have no clue how the kayak actually works. And like, oh my god, I actually said the kayak. I sound so old. Um, so Kayak in general aggregates the data from a bunch of airlines, and I know there's like I don't know what to call them. Like they do hotels, they do airlines,
Mhm.
but I'm not saying that the analogy is wrong or bad. I think it's great because again, you kind
Yeah.
of want to say we're the Netflix of this, or we're the Grub, we're the Uber Eats of this, or people just want they like immediately understand the concept of aggregation, convenience, streaming, immediate streaming entertainment, whatever it is. So when it comes to this kayak analogy,
Yeah.
I want to tease it out a little bit more because let's say
Sure.
you do take the concept of airlines. As we know, there are different airlines, there are different brands. One very major one is kind of like the affordable mid tier. Delta, American Airlines, Southwest, right? They're affordable, they're reliable. Again, to the extent
Mhm.
that their
Yeah.
weather and
Yeah.
holiday travel, they're not
Mhm.
always reliable, but they get you from point A to point B.
Sure.
And then you have Spirit Airlines, right? You and I have heard all, and the listeners have heard about the memes. You got to pay extra for to breathe. You have to pay extra for to take your shoes off, or for people who do that. Um, but yeah, it's like shaky. Pay extra to like land safely and all that.
Yeah.
So like you do have different brands and price tiers. But with breaking, would you say that there are different again, we're talking about the same box, the same, I don't know, case or the same anything, but
Yeah.
like what do you think about the analogy given like, the
Yeah,
different
I get where you're going with that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there are kind of different tiers of breakers in a way,
yeah,
as far as their scaling and how much product they actually
yes.
break. Um, and whether it's uh, actual kind of a business with employees, or is it a
Hmm.
solo breaker? Do they have overhead?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah, exactly.
there is a lot of factors that go into it. Um, what we're doing, obviously, that's kind of we're just focusing on the pricing. We can't really account for at this point the entertainment value.
Hmm.
Maybe in the future, it's not our main focus right now. Maybe in the future, we will have kind of a rating system that's done
Mm,
correctly, without ability to kind of leave negative reviews. It would have to be thought through very carefully and
yeah.
done in the correct way. But yeah, it's not something we're focused on currently, though.
Got I totally respect that. I mean, it makes
Yeah,
sense. You're like, these are the
yeah,
numbers. So, yeah, solo breakers, group break. Not when I say group breakers, like, I mean, I just recently had filth bomb breaks where they're like, we're in a
yeah,
forget how many square foot, but like a warehouse, right? And they just have like
yeah.
again, I think that some people they don't. It's like I saw a recent meme. Shout out to Quim Cards because I think he should have more followers, but um it's like I don't care about how much you're into the card for. Like in a card show, right? When a
Right.
seller's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I'm into this card for
yeah,
200." It's like, "I don't care. I want the card for what the current market value is, not what you bought it for 2 years ago." I feel like some people, some consumers are the same way with break prices. They're like, "I don't care what your overhead it is," or like a pizza joint um, where the rent is really high in downtown versus like the suburbs. It's like
sure.
I just want the best tasting pizza at the most affordable price. So yeah, I think that there are some consumers where price is the only thing that matters, and for those folks, I think it's great. For some folks, it's like again, maybe it's the reputation or the trust or the I really like these breakers are so reliable, right? Because you could have someone who's super cheap, right? And I won't say
Mhm.
any names, but I've seen some names that are currently in your list that are very like affordable. I don't know anything about them.
Sure.
But could they maybe ship out a little bit later than the other, like someone who has a shipping and handling team, right? Because they have employees, because they have
Mhm.
people who are like shipping and packing and sorting same day. Like I remember being a breaker, a really bad one, I think. But I remember I'm like, man, I streamed for 3 hours. My back is hurting. I'm gonna pack this tomorrow morning or whatever, and
Mhm.
just and again, that's still the same lead time, ship it out by noon the next day. But like, there's some people who can sit on the break and, have it sorted out on their trays and just just shipped out like 2-3 days later, and that would not be for the people who really value expediency. That would be a turnoff.
I would think in that particular case, an individual that was trying that particular breaker for the first time, they may not go back and break with them, even if it is cheaper in that particular scenario that you created there. And some pushback that I've gotten is they're cheap on the list. A breaker's cheap on the list, but they only get a few cases. They're not going to remain once they're done breaking the product or don't have product to break anymore. They're not going to remain on the list. That price, that bottom dollar price, isn't going to remain on the list anymore if they're not still breaking that particular product. And the price in general will go up for a box price over as time goes, as more product is broken of that particular product, because it's simple supply and demand. In most cases, the demand will be there to an extent in line with the amount of product that's available, because you're not getting those particular cheaper breakers that are out of the product still on the list. So the pricing will go up, as kind of as I reported for 2023 Bowman draft the other day, taking the pricing from release day. I think it was it was the last year, sometime at the end of last year, over the course of a few months. And for the top teams, you can see all but one went up in price, and there's very few breakers that are even still breaking that particular product.
Right, because they move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Yeah, not that it's a huge deal, but there is other things to take into account as well, as far as the big hits for the product. I think we were actually discussing that the other day through Instagram with the Tom Brady superfractor auto and non-auto that was already pulled, but like the one that on the 10 list from Fanatics 10 list,
inscription,
it's still out there. Yeah.
At the time of recording this, I'll just say in general, mid-March, I cannot believe that the inscription, and I think the color's orange, but I know it's out of 50. It's like 12. It's the number match or the jersey match, whatever people want to market it as. 12 of 50. If now I'm gonna botch up the inscription, but like if football doesn't work out, there's always baseball, that type of thing, or just kind of like making a fun thing about the what if scenario of Brady playing baseball. It hasn't been ripped. It hasn't revealed itself to the public yet, which is pretty amazing. The conspiracy theorists out there would be like, if it's open on day one, or it's going to be a big breaker, and look, I mean, the product's dead. I mean, there's so many. It's like anything that happens in the hobby, which I like both love and hate, is like this. There's always a reason for something. There's always they're the people who are so jaded. It doesn't matter what happens. It's always a negative spin. And then of course there are the people who, whatever happens, it's always a positive spin. They call them the fanboys and stuff. But it's you mentioned the pushback you get. It's interesting. You got I was like, do we talk about haters, Nick? But some breakers have not liked what you've done, because it's like, oh, you don't understand the value or entertainment I bring. And I'm like, okay, I think everyone's trying to be entertaining. I mean, I don't think anyone's sitting there being a robot, being like, it's all about the cards and I don't want to build community. I think every breaker wants to build community. It's just a matter of maybe some of them do it more, do it better than others, or they're more entertaining. They have more charisma or more personality. But I think everyone's trying to make it fun. I mean, it's not fun if you just, I remember when I was breaking, it wasn't like I was just, sitting there, just singing. Well, I did sing a little bit because I was so bored sometimes, but like, you're not just there to like fill a warm seat. You want to do something. Right. So, man, like the haters though, they will always have something to say, right?
Yeah, it happens, but I get more. Overall, there's more compliments that have gotten so many more than the haters.
Right.
So
Absolutely. So,
it's not
it's
really
a
a big
really
deal.
yes, and I'm definitely complimentary of what you're doing too, because again, you're providing value to the hobby.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's interesting this idea of prices that don't last. Prices that are advertised as a certain way, but then their allocation it runs out, and then the prices go up. Again, it's almost like an analogy to the airplanes flying, where we're all I mean, take aside the whole idea of like first class, business class, and economy and
Right.
whatever. They
Yeah.
fractionalized economy like Wendy's. It's like economy plus plus. Do you want an extra 1 or 2 inches of legroom? Um, but as we know, when you fly, depending on the demand and the time of day and how many seats they've actually sold, super early and super late flights are just cheaper.
Mhm.
Middle of the week flights are cheaper than like flying on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and all that. So prices do go up and down. And it's good that you kind of again, I don't know if you call it the evolution of your content, but it's not so static. It's like how often do you update your prices? Like is it like a daily thing? Is it like how much work goes into the aggregation part?
Sure. It really depends on the product. Um, After the product first releases, and a few days prior to the product release, when people were actually still posting it, it's very frequently every day or 2 days. If it's a hot product, obviously every day.
Yeah.
But once you get 4 or 5 days out, even a week out, there's a very few on non-popular products, very few breakers even breaking that particular product for it to even
Mhm.
make sense to put in uh, the time on our end to actually keep following it over time, because
Yeah.
usually the demand's not there and the amount of breakers aren't there for to really make sense to compare pricing.
That's well said. I really
Mhm.
like that. And I just sorry, I did check my phone because I want to see if there were any questions because I did want to
Sure.
transition into like the questions from Instagram type of thing.
Yeah, sure.
But I think my question that I just asked is very akin to what Cardboard Inc. asked, which is what is the process to compile the data? Is it done by hand or programmatically, and how often? So you answered the how often, like
Sure.
daily. Depends on how hot the product is and the
Uh-huh.
release time and all that. But I mean, I don't know about like by hand. Like I mean, you're not handwriting it and like
Mhm.
posting, pictures of your handwriting, which I have been accused of having terrible handwriting. Again, it's you can't please everyone on the internet. But yeah, do you when you aggregate? Are you what is it like? Again, I don't know how much you want to share with like the secret sauce, but like, is it like
Yeah.
a .csv? Is it Excel? Is it some sort of C++ like software program? Like, what's going on there?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not really going to get into technology behind
Okay,
it and everything like that, obviously, and as we're still building it and making it even better.
sure,
But
respect that.
to answer the question, I can't answer the question, obviously. It's a combination of both. By hand, I think they probably meant like manually, because some breakers are sending us prices directly,
Uh-huh.
in addition to, the other ways we collect the data.
Okay, awesome. I actually have a question from a breaker, Nature Loves You, who I really enjoy his not podcast, his content.
Mhm.
So shout out to Nature. Bought a card from him too, and he gave me a free
Nice.
sweatshirt, which was nice. Um, his question is it fair to list, and this is verbatim, so
Yeah.
is it fair to list what breakers are selling for without listing what they're purchasing for? So I think maybe that goes towards the allocation
Sure.
and things like that. Like, what do you think about that question?
Um, I don't know. I don't have the allocation numbers, and honestly, that's kind of not what we're trying to provide to the end user. We're trying to provide. Honestly, I don't care what a breaker pays for a product. I'm more for all for capitalism. I want to display, the lowest price up to the highest price to the collectors or the consumers that breakers are offering their product. So in the end, if they're getting a great buy, it doesn't really matter to the individual that's buying that what a breaker paid if they're getting the best buy or buying in at the right price for a particular
Yeah,
break.
I think it goes back
Is
to what
my
we're.
thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I kind of
Yeah,
agree in a way. Like I am
yeah.
certainly sympathetic towards the smaller breakers, especially where
Mhm.
they're like struggling to find, loose
Absolutely. Yeah.
cases and boxes and whatever, like half of a master case and all that stuff. But it's the concept of, you know, I'm into it for $200, and it's, you see the recent comps and it's like 100, 120, 125. I'm not paying anything close to $200 for a card that is recently comping for closer to 100.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel bad. Like, I mean, I am certainly an empathetic person, but it's like, okay, capitalism, like you said, capitalism, baby.
Yeah, there are a lot of small breakers though too that are very very competitive with their pricing as
Yeah,
well.
they are.
So it's
Yeah,
not like just because they're a small breaker
that's true.
or don't get the allocation that they're gonna be a high price.
Yes. So, I said I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask every question that comes through because some of them are not nice or well put or well said. I like.
I
I'd have to.
I I don't care if
Yeah.
you want to ask it, ask it.
So this kind of goes to the maybe. Well, I'll ask two questions in a row. One's
Yeah,
one's asked nicely, and I wrote it down in my notes, and then the other one is kind of maybe a little rougher on the edges, I'll say.
sure.
So, J. Scott Dubb, he asked two questions, but I'll ask one of them. Um, do you think breakers on YouTube are cheaper because they don't have whatnot fees and fees like other platforms, and that could be like Loop or Drip and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, the more rougher way, NH Cards asks, why do you pick on Little Pullman? Their prices are more because they pay fees, others don't.
I don't think I pick on Little Pullman.
Yeah.
I treat him as any other breaker, but if you go after, BreakComp and saying inaccurate data, when I prove otherwise, after public statements are made like that, I will back that up or go after
Yes.
that particular break. And the other part of that is, I would say, the other second part of that, and to answer the first question
Yeah.
as well, I do feel I don't really track that many breakers on YouTube. They may be breaking on YouTube, but
Hmm.
like breakers on X and Facebook, like Facebook groups, they wouldn't have those particular fees,
Hmm.
and they I would say tend to be on the cheaper side in general. That's just generally speaking. Obviously, that doesn't remain true for every particular product or anything because they may not even get the allocation to break a particular product.
Yeah. I know these people ask this for your expertise and your
Mhm.
perspective because it's the best. Every guest brings their knowledge and expertise. My peanut gallery answer would kind of be like, well, if we're talking like somewhere between 3 to 7% for platform fees, some of the break price differences are not that close. They're not narrow 3 to 7% margin differences. We're talking
Exactly.
like 20%,
Yeah.
50%. I mean, there's some prices that are just, I've seen the cheapest selling breaker versus the 20th, and it's like double the price. That's 100%. So
Yeah.
again, like, I yes, you're my guest, and I want you to feel comfortable. Like, I mean, the way that the second question questioner, kind of saying little pull man and all that,
Mhm.
it is kind of getting to the pushback that you've received. But
Right.
I respect your answer because I think it totally makes sense. I mean, it's like you're not playing favorites or going after anyone in particular. You're just like the numbers are the numbers, and if someone attacks the numbers, to defend the integrity of your data, I think is normal. It's perfectly. That's Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Agreed. I don't want to have to comment
Yeah,
on things like that. It's only in instances where I have
Nick,
to.
I wasn't gonna ask it, but you said you'd be willing to,
Yeah.
so thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
Q Train Sports, I think we answered this, but it says could BreakComp grow to also review breakers? You said it's currently not on your, plans, but that is a good way to kind of differentiate people who are, you know, shipping speed, trustworthy vibe is what Q Train wrote here. So I think that's again a new iteration that you may consider in the future. But I mean, right? How do you even data that? It's so hard, right? I mean, you got the angry the person who one stars everything, and what do you do about those folks, right? So
yeah.
The other question J Scott Dub asked that I want to ask, because I'm interested in this as well, is when does price of a new product peak and when does it really drop off? Because as we know, when things are hot, they go more than MSRP, and then at a certain point, the online shops, they start doing the discounts, right? Like I've bought old product to try to rip, like Revolution basketball after it stopped being hot, just because I thought I could make some margin off it because I was just buying it from them, and so like 30% off and all that stuff. So do you have a general idea? Because we were just talking about Bowman Draft, right? About how the prices have fluctuated. When do you think generally does a price of a new product peak and when does it drop off?
Yeah, it's really a tough question to answer because there's so many different factors as far as the performance of the players, how hot or popular the product is. I can't even really answer that. I can go back to the example of Bowman Draft where it's kind of prospect time of year too with spring training.
Prospect, yes.
So it makes sense that the teams and the product will be a little bit higher with Wyatt Langford performing well, and it has, excuse me, some other good prospects in that particular product. So it really varies.
I respect that answer because you're not BSing. You're just like, it's too hard to tell. And I do think that it can be very specific and change with every product. Can you imagine, I'm more of a basketball guy and they come out with Flawless after the season ends every year. It seems like Panini does. And then you have Bowman Draft where the timing of Bowman Draft is so important. Can you imagine if Bowman Draft came out in the middle of the season? Because sorry, shipping production delays. Paul Skeens isn't what we thought, and like people are like, you can't yell out Paul Skeens or Wyatt Langford if they're like a bust. Right. Of course, you gotta, bring it. You have to bring that to market before spring training. But I imagine product does drop off. I mean, Bowman Draft. Who's really going to be again? I mean, the big draw is of course the bounty or whatever on the Brady 12 of 50, but you can't. I mean, some of these prospects are immediately. Again, there's a long timelines, and I'm finding that alluring about baseball as I learn more about it. Is with the NBA, it's like you can immediately tell if someone's going to be a bust, and there are very few players who are able to kind of like reinvent their game on the fly and just become a guy out of nowhere. It's like once they get on the court, you're either Anthony Bennett or you're Wemby. So baseball though, I mean, you got all those minor league levels to get to the show. I mean, you got A, double A, triple A. I won't go into all of them, but it is really amazing to see people buying cards of 18-year-olds and they may not make the show until they're like 24 or low.
Yeah, sometimes even younger than 18 if they come from if they're international prospect signing.
Oh yeah. There's like I think the savior of the Washington Nationals is currently like 4 years old and is like playing with like a t-ball. He's gonna come to the Nats, baby, and I don't know what his name is, but he's amazing. No, but yes,
I don't know. Washington has a lot of good prospects.
They do.
That Soto trade was not bad for them at all.
Yeah, no. Yes, you certainly know more. What is it? Elian Soto is on the team. Like,
yeah. I guess he was. I forget what product he was in a recent. Product.
I hope he's better than what is that Acuna brother Brian Acuna?
There's Brian and also I think he has two.
Another one.
Luis Angel. Acuna, I believe, is the other one.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how there's like all these brothers. It must be really cool. I mean,
Yeah,
but you got the
yeah,
one.
yeah.
It's very Steph Curry, Seth Curry. It's like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
Del Curry's on his phone, and he's like, he's in a meeting, and he gets the phone notification, and it's like Steph calling. He's like, oh, sorry, let me go get this call. I got to step out of this meeting, and it's like Seth Curry's calling. And he's like, I gotta go to voicemail. It's Seth. It's all right. It's not that important. I mean, we'll get to him later. No, I'm just kidding. Oh gosh. But no, I really appreciate you taking those questions. There are a couple more, but I want to be respectful of your time. We're over the hour mark. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for all of this. I mean, I had some questions at the end that you've already answered, like your PC and just kind of like the airline model and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So is there anything you want to plug right before we end? I know we got breakcomp.com.
Yeah, just I guess my social media channels, which is BreakCompCards. I'm primarily on Instagram, but also
Yeah.
on X and Facebook with the same handles as well. Uh, yeah, check me out. Hit me up with any questions, suggestions. Yeah.
Nick, you're so hip. You said X instead of Twitter. That's like you're so modern. I feel like everyone's like X,
Yeah.
formerly Twitter. It's like,
Yeah.
oh god.
It's
Um,
shorter. It's shorter to say, and yeah, I think of it as Twitter for the most part.
yeah.
To be honest with you.
But also, I guess shout out to your, I guess I forget to what call him, but like your partner or collaborator, PC Sports Cards, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
So yeah, so your Instagram handle is BreakCompCards, but the website is breakcomp.com.
that's correct.
And
Yeah,
so, yeah, I just want to make that clear. So again, the title for this episode is going to be Breaking Break Comps with Break Comp of Break Comp Cards.
well
I'm
done.
sorry.
Love
I
it.
just love it. I can't, got to have fun with this stuff. I mean, there are
Go with
too
it.
many people who are way too stiff and serious about all of this
That's
stuff in the
right.
hobby. You got to have fun.
That's right.
Nick, you've been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on. I look forward to publishing this and having people find out more about you. When I get into more breaks, I am going to use BreakComp. I'm going to sign up for a free account so I can get more searches in, and I'll just be in touch with you. But thank you for everything you do for the hobby. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that, and thanks for inviting me on your show. I had a great time. Thanks,
Awesome.
Denny.
Thank you. Take care.
Yep, have a great one.
All
Bye.
right, you too. Bye.